Hello and welcome to the Unseen Question. It's a short line, but it points to something bigger. The way we question, argue, and wrestle with meaning, especially when it comes to the deepest questions we can ask. Where do we come from? What's the point of life? How do we decide what's right and wrong? And if there's no God, then what? These are the kinds of questions that don't go away. And they shouldn't. In 2025, the conversation around belief, religion, and secular life is louder and more global than ever. But for people who don't believe in a God, the questions haven't gotten easier, just more layered, more nuanced, and in some cases, more urgent. Some are old philosophical questions. Others are reactions to newer cultural shifts. Some come from well-meaning people who are genuinely curious. Others are sharp, even hostile, meant to trap you or test you. But today, we're going to take a calm and serious look at the questions people say are the hardest to answer without appealing to religion. The ones often thrown like rhetorical grenades, and the ones we rarely answer in a full, satisfying way. Let's start with the one that often comes up first. If there's no God, where do we get morality from? This question assumes morality comes from somewhere outside of us, handed down, unchangeable, and absolute. But that idea has never really matched reality. Even inside religious traditions, moral codes have shifted over time. The rules we follow today are wildly different from the ones found in Scripture, often thankfully so. The death penalty for working on the Sabbath? Not something most religious people would enforce now. Shellfish, mixed fabrics, slavery, women's rights, all these were once matters of religious law. But society's moved on. Why? Because morality isn't fixed. It's negotiated. It evolves as we evolve. The better question might be, how have we built moral systems that reflect our values, fairness, harm reduction, empathy, without needing to invoke the supernatural? The answer is through dialogue, experience, reason, and the willingness to listen to others' suffering. Neuroscience and evolutionary psychology now give us frameworks for how morality might have developed naturally. Social animals, including humans, thrive on cooperation. Empathy and fairness aren't divine gifts. They're survival strategies. We see early versions of them in chimpanzees, elephants, even rats. Is it perfect? No. But it's responsive, dynamic, and open to revision. Religious morality often isn't. Here's another big one. Without religion, how do we find meaning? It's a good question, and it's usually asked with a little fear baked in, as if life can't be meaningful unless something out there gives it meaning. But meaning isn't something we receive, it's something we create. And we do it all the time. Through relationships, creativity, work, learning, love, purpose isn't a hand-me-down. It's something we carve out of our circumstances. Think about it. If someone told you your life had meaning just because you were part of a divine plan, would that really feel satisfying? Or would it feel like being a character in someone else's story? The truth is, making meaning in the face of uncertainty is one of the most human things we do. And it's actually more meaningful because it's not guaranteed. Like Camus said, we're the only creatures who refuse to accept the script we're given. That refusal is where our freedom begins. Another common one, if humans are just material, atoms, neurons, chemicals, how do we explain consciousness? This one's tricky. Because honestly, science doesn't have a full answer yet. Consciousness is still a frontier. But the lack of an answer doesn't mean the default explanation should be supernatural. Not knowing something doesn't make the religious answer more likely. It just means we don't know yet. But the fact that brain damage can change a person's personality or that anesthesia can switch off consciousness temporarily suggests something important. Our sense of self seems tightly connected to physical processes. There's no clear evidence for a soul that exists apart from the body. The more we learn about the brain, the more consciousness seems like an emergent property, not a separate, ghostly entity. Then there's this, how can something come from nothing? This is usually meant to stump you. And to be fair, it's a real mind-bender. The idea that the universe just began without anything before it feels intuitively wrong. But here's the thing, our intuitions are shaped by the world we evolved in. Cause and effect, time, space. These make sense inside the universe. But at the beginning of the universe, those rules may not apply. Physicists like Lawrence Krauss and Sean Carroll have argued that nothing in cosmology doesn't mean absolute nothingness. It can refer to quantum vacuums, where particles can arise spontaneously. The idea that something can come from what seems like nothing isn't absurd in modern physics. It's just deeply unfamiliar. And even if we could prove the universe was created, it doesn't follow that it was created by a conscious being, let alone one that's still watching us. That leap from mystery to deity is huge and unsupported. Here's one that hits closer to home. What about all the good religion has done? Hospitals, schools, charity, art. It's true. Religious institutions have played major roles in building human civilization. But that doesn't mean religion caused goodness. It just means people use the institutions available to them. If you live in a religious society and you want to help others, you're likely to do it through religious channels. That doesn't mean the belief system is what made you moral. It just means that's the structure you had. We can appreciate the good without ignoring the harm. Holy wars, inquisitions, forced conversions, resistance to science, persecution of minorities. These aren't footnotes, they're part of the same story. The question isn't whether religious people can be good. Of course they can. The question is, do we need religion to be good? And the evidence says no. Another sharp one, isn't belief in something anything better than nihilism? But this frames things too narrowly. As if there are only two choices, believe in a God or believe in nothing. But there's a third option, building a life rooted in reality, responsibility, and connection without needing cosmic guarantees. You don't need a supernatural foundation to care about truth or justice or beauty. In fact, those things become even more precious when you realize they aren't promised. That this life is the only one we know we have, and the world we build together is what we leave behind. Let's take a more personal one. What happens after we die? It's the ultimate human question. And it's one most people don't like the honest answer to. We don't know for sure. But every bit of evidence we do have points to the mind shutting down when the brain does. No memories floating off. No continued awareness. Just nothing. And yes, that's a hard pill to swallow. But maybe that's what makes life now more meaningful. Knowing that our time is limited doesn't cheapen it. It sharpens it. The people we love, the choices we make, the things we create, all of them matter more because they don't last forever. There's a quiet dignity in accepting mortality, in facing the void without needing to fill it with fantasies. It's not bleak, it's honest. And there's a kind of peace in that. Some critics ask, why challenge religion at all? Isn't it harmless if it brings people comfort? But comfort alone doesn't make something harmless. Beliefs shape actions. They shape laws, policies, votes. And when those beliefs are based on claims that can't be questioned, they can cause real harm. Think of how many people have been denied rights, education, medical care, or dignity because of religious doctrines. Think about how many young people have been told they're broken just for being who they are. Comfort for some can mean suffering for others. That's why it matters what we believe, not just privately, but publicly. Then there's a less hostile, more curious question. If you're not religious, what do you do with awe? The answer is everything. Because awe doesn't belong to religion. It belongs to experience. The night sky, music, birth, mathematics, evolution. There's no shortage of wonder in the natural world. In fact, knowing how something works, really works, can make it more amazing, not less. Learning how stars are born doesn't make the sky feel colder. It makes it feel more alive. Last one. What's the point of debating any of this? People believe what they believe. True. But beliefs don't exist in a vacuum. They influence the world we all share. And asking hard questions, even when the answers aren't comfortable, is how we grow. Not every question has a clean answer. Not every belief system collapses under scrutiny. But the willingness to look, to challenge, to revise what we think we know. That's how progress happens. We don't ask tough questions to tear people down. We ask them because the truth matters. And the only way to get closer to it is to keep asking. And when we do keep asking, something starts to change. Not just in our understanding of the world, but in how we relate to it. When we let go of the idea that there's a fixed cosmic order giving us answers, we start taking more responsibility for the questions. Suddenly, morality isn't about obedience. It's about empathy. Purpose isn't handed to us. It's built through how we live. And death isn't a doorway to somewhere else. It's a reminder to be present now. This doesn't mean life becomes empty. If anything, it becomes fuller. Because meaning doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from caring enough to look for them. There's also something freeing about not needing to explain everything through an all-powerful being. We stop forcing complex questions into simple, pre-written answers. We stop pretending that ancient texts hold the final word on things we're only just beginning to understand. And we begin to see that not knowing isn't a weakness. It's a space for discovery. In 2025, with all the information, misinformation, and digital noise around us, the biggest challenge might not be belief or non-belief, but intellectual humility. The willingness to say, I don't know, without rushing to fill the silence with easy certainties. That silence, that space between certainty and doubt, is where real thinking happens. And that's something worth defending. Now let's step back. When people ask these hard questions about morality, meaning, origins, purpose, what are they really looking for? Usually, not a debate, not a philosophical lecture. They're looking for something solid, something to hold on to, some sense that life still matters, that human beings aren't just random molecules, that love, kindness, justice, these things aren't illusions. And the answer is, they're not. We don't need a God to value kindness. We don't need eternal punishment to avoid doing harm. We don't need a promised heaven to make this world worth saving. The things that matter, relationships, integrity, learning, beauty, they matter because we care about them. Because we choose to care. Not because we're told to. And that's the key. The toughest questions don't require the oldest answers. They require honest ones. Answers that respect the complexity of being human, without trying to flatten it under the weight of dogma. It's okay not to have everything figured out. What matters is how we respond to the unknown. Whether we meet it with fear or with curiosity. And if there's one thing history has shown, it's that our capacity for curiosity, for asking better questions, even when the answers are hard, is what moves us forward. So when someone asks, if you don't believe, then how do you explain? Maybe the best response isn't a defensive one. Maybe it's this: let's think about it together. That openness, that quiet confidence in reason and reflection is more powerful than any sermon. It doesn't close the book. It keeps the pages turning. And maybe that's the real answer. Not that we have all the answers, but that we don't stop asking the questions that matter. Because in the end, a life built on thought, honesty, and compassion, even without divine commands, is not just possible. It's more human than ever. And maybe that's enough. Not certainty. Not a grand design written in the stars, but the effort, the daily, deliberate effort to live well, to treat others with dignity, and to stay open to what's true, even when it challenges us. That's not a consolation prize. That's the core of what it means to be conscious, thinking beings in a world that doesn't owe us answers. So when the toughest questions come, and they will, we don't need to panic. We don't need to default to old ideas just because they're familiar. We can pause, consider, and respond with clarity, not fear. We can say, I care about truth. I care about people. I care about this life here and now. And that's enough reason to keep going. Maybe the real strength isn't in having the answers. It's in asking the questions anyway, and still choosing to live with depth, purpose, and compassion. No promise of eternity. No divine approval. Just the astonishing fact that we're here. Thinking, choosing, questioning. That's not something to fear. That's something to celebrate.